if made one different decision in my path to get out, we'd have been jumping in the ocean, no question.
My goodness.
And you know, the worst part of it was, so
Dang, you take a vacation from, like work where that's supposed to be your daily thing, and then you that.
this isn't the worst part of the story, though. My sister-in-law, my wife Barb's sister, is a widow. Lost a child at less than
Are at quorum.
Welcome.
Good evening. Welcome to the November meeting of the Eugene Police Commission. I'm Vice Chair Hawkins, and I will be chairing this evening's meeting because Chair Boggs actually is celebrating with the American Cancer Society Men Wear Pink ambassadors. They surpassed their fundraising goal, and they are having their awards banquet this evening. So Chair Boggs is not in attendance this evening. Last month, we covered the MyPD Connect, the software used to make the online reporting of crimes much more user-friendly and accessible to the consumers. And Colin Woolston was here explaining quite a bit about that. We also covered quite a bit about downtown safety. Chief Skinner spent several minutes explaining to us the initiatives that are happening downtown to make it better. Next month, we will have Senator James Manning joining us to present some of the work he's doing in the state legislature on behalf of and to benefit law enforcement. And we would like to encourage in-person attendance. If you are all at all available to attend in person, then we would love to have you and see your faces around the table.
Do you mind asking if they can hear us okay?
Audio check. Can you guys hear us? Okay. Thank you, Councilor Gay. And then can I have a moment to, or a motion to approve the minutes from the October meeting?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Okay. Thank you. And a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Thank
Scott.
you. Good evening, Scott. Glad you're here.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Okay. So, Holly, we motioned and seconded. Now we can vote on it.
Yes.
All right. Well then, all in favor of approving the minutes from the October meeting, say aye.
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 6. All right. Any opposed, please say no. Apparently, that's a unanimous passage of the minutes. We'll move into the liaison reports. Commissioner Lemons, what can you tell us about HRC?
Okay. Thank you, Vice Chair. So yeah, the Human Rights Commission, we were updated on 3 cases. So there was one young man who was exercising at the Defy Sports Park in the foam pit at a birthday party on looks like Cosmic Night, where they offer lights and all that good stuff that we enjoyed when we were in high school. At least one assailant used an anti-Asian slur in the fight that occurred there. That case is assigned, open, and making good progress at the moment. There was another case where a man who owns a landscaping company saw 2 people taking his tools. He pulled the person who was taking the tools ended up pulling a baseball bat and made anti-Mexican remarks. That case is open and assigned as well. And then there was a pride flag stolen off of a house and damaged beyond repair. And that currently has no lead, so it is not assigned at this moment. And for my commissioner comments, I just wanted to thank the chair and vice chair for including the technology piece in this. I also want to thank Dre and Fabio for coming today to present the Office of Equity and Community Engagement's Human Rights Abuses for 2023 report. And I would really like to thank Commissioner Parham, Commissioner Dr. Booker, and Vice Chair Hawkins for our very productive subcommittee meeting on mental health. Thank you.
Sure, Lemons, for my reference, when you say that a case is open, with whom is it open? Is it open with EPD or is there another agency involved?
No, it's being investigated by EPD.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
See here, Lyman. Judge Lyman, please provide a report for CRB.
Sure, the CRB did not meet since we last met, and I think there's a national convention of police auditors or something in Chicago when they're all heading there next week. So we will not be meeting this month. So I will let you know what happens there at following our next meeting, and I don't have any commissioner comments. So thank you.
Councilor Ye, do you have a report from City Council?
Yeah, unless Alan can think of anything, I'm not sure we have had anything that is police policy related going on. We did talk about some. We did talk to the chief about some issues around open air drug use, but it wasn't anything policy related. It was more related to Measure 110. So I don't know, Alan, do you got something to add?
No, I don't think we did either. So that was the only thing I thought of was the 110 conversation. But the chief can address that in his remarks if he wants.
Councilor Ye, while we're on you, do you have any commissioners' comments?
Oh, sorry, I don't. Thank you.
Councilor Zelenka?
Me either.
If you guys keep doing this is going to be a really fast meeting. All right. Commissioner Dominguez, do you have commissioners' comments this evening?
Yeah. Basically, the University of Oregon group, the AIAS, which is like the student version of the AIA, is working on a shower idea as well. So that's kind of the thing that I talked about last time. Councilor Ye, I really appreciate any kind of context you can have with regard to, you know, how the Portland Loos are being serviced and all that kind of stuff, just because, I don't know, there's just a lot of excitement around the idea. And I know that there aren't any promises made, but what we want to do is basically we're kind of creating ideas. We're trying to see whether or not we can partner with churches or anything, maybe instead of partnering with the city, but also kind of reaching out in that regard, with respect to the city, just kind of thinking about the cleanliness issue that we were talking about last time.
Bonnie, did no one get in touch with you?
No one got in touch with me.
Okay.
And I also reached out to them
that.
I also reached out myself and nobody reached out to me.
Okay, well, I did ask someone to contact you, so I will circle back and see what happened with that. I apologize.
It's all right. Okay, thank you. All right, excuse me.
Dr. Booker, commissioner comments?
No commissioner comments.
Thank you. Commissioner Wynn?
No comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Mogart? We will come back to Commissioner Mogart. Commissioner Shivers is unable to attend this evening. So Lincoln, no commissioner comments. Yay, no commissioner comments. Layman's already did commissioner comments. Commissioner Parham.
Yes, good evening, everybody. I just wanted to say that we're in a crisis in the city and state and nation currently, and we're in an epidemic like we've never seen before. And fentanyl is the cheapest, strongest opioid that we've ever seen hit the streets in Eugene. And so when someone overdoses on fentanyl, they can be saved by Narcan. A lot of the information that's out on the books right now actually states that addiction is an illness. And so the voters of Oregon approved Measure 110, which decriminalized illicit fentanyl use. And so this brings me to a recent, about 3 weeks ago, a concerned citizen, was witnessing someone overdose on fentanyl, and they flagged down four different police officers and asked each officer if they had Narcan in their possession. And none of those officers had Narcan in their possession. And so my question, I guess this would turn into a question, is there a requirement for EPD officers to carry Narcan? And if there is not, then a suggestion and an ask from me would be for there to start being a requirement for EPD officers to be required to carry Narcan, especially because they a lot of times are taking on that role of first responder, especially if a person is being seen as unconscious. I don't know why the fire department and cahoots would be equipped to do that job where officers wouldn't be equipped. Thank you.
Chief Skinner's not here this evening, but we have Deputy Chief Adams. I'll let you address that.
Yeah, Commissioner, thank you for those comments. Fentanyl is eviscerating our communities. We know this. The impacts of ballot measure 110 are probably immeasurable. Well conceived, good idea, just not well delivered. I think anybody could say that. I do have a question, and I just want to confirm, this is for Eugene police officers that didn't have Narcan?
Yes, from the report that I got from the person, they were telling me that they flagged down one officer, and one officer said, I don't have it. And then 3 additional officers, they asked them if they had Narcan, and none of them had Narcan, either the nasal or the injectable type.
Yeah, this is actually, I'll go all the way to mind blowing to me. We have been, our officers are carrying Narcan. We have used it to the tune of thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars a year. We're trying to figure out exactly how many times we're using Narcan. It's become so prevalent, it's not even reported at times anymore how much we're using Narcan. The amount we're using Narcan is so much that we just did a command directive authorizing our officers to carry 2 doses on them because we were using it up. So, Commissioner Parham, I'm going to have to do some checking on this because there's no explanation for unless they had previously used it. If they didn't have it on their person, I have trouble understanding why that occurred.
Four different officers.
Yeah,
I'm having a lot. I can
Yeah.
provide to you. I can drop a link in the chat to where I saw this.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Or actually, Commissioner Parham, if you want to email that to me, I can get that to Deputy Chief Adams. Do you have my email address?
Yes, I do, Holly. I can do that right now.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll tell you, that should not happen. And I definitely want to look into understanding why that occurred. That should not be happening.
Commissioner Booker, I saw your hand go up and go back
William?
down. Have a question?
William, did you
Wasn't a
directly
question.
witness that, or is that a third party report?
This was a third party report that's available online. And so I don't doubt the person's sincerity. They claimed that they had used their nasal Narcan on the person that was experiencing the overdose. It did not work because a lot of the fentanyl that is on the street right now is not when people are overdosing, it's not being treated. And they flagged one officer down, additional officers came, and none of them had Narcan on their person.
Dr. Booker?
No, I
Thank you.
didn't.
Commissioner Lemons?
Thank you, Vice Chair. I was just super quickly, I was wondering if we could all get that email that he's sending to you to review it.
Yes, I could share that with you all.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you, Molly. All right, so that covered commissioners' comments. The next item was the Law Enforcement Mental Health and Wellness Subcommittee update. And I'm doing a victory dance because we had a meeting. It went really, really well. We kicked off. Commissioners Booker, Parham, and Lemons all were there participating with me. And we were able to achieve some, we shared, there was quite a lot of information sharing as well as gathering perspectives of the work that we are hoping to achieve and the milestones that we will set for ourselves to determine if we are actually achieving success, what does success look like. One thing to note for the entire police commission is that the COPS grant that EPD applied for, we had the city of Eugene, which would have provided the funding for EPD to stand up a law enforcement specific employee assistance program. That grant was actually not given to us. So we are actually back at square one now, as I understand it, where there is no plan to move forward to find an alternative to the funding. So we are back to where we started on that one. We will again, EPD will of course try again next year. And as the police commission, I'm hoping we can come up with possibly a more effective or strongly worded letter of support for that grant. One thing that was uncovered during our conversation, and DC Adams, maybe in your chief's comments, if you have time to address it, and we'd love to know more. The appearance is given to us that officers who are involved in shooting, they are placed on administrative leave, but it sounds like when they return to work, they return to the streets without a mandatory psych evaluation.
It's not correct.
Can you please clarify for us?
Sure. Senate Bill 111, which was passed, don't quote me on the time frame, 12 years ago or so, provides some specifics as to what needs to occur prior to an officer returning to duty. In this particular agency, not only is there admin leave placed upon a person, but they're provided peer support by specially trained police officers that are trained in trauma. And then they are given a psych eval prior to returning to duty. So it's not just the hard skills that we think of, such as your shooting, your accuracy, different things that are assessed prior to returning to duty, the soft skills as well, as far as mental health, physical well-being, the whole gamut.
Thank you.
Right.
I always appreciate clarifications that where we're happy to be wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Another couple of things is that from the ride-alongs that I've done with EPD, it does appear that resources that are currently available, whether it's PSRT or perhaps the EAP or any sort of outside assistance, they appear that they are not fully made available, or possibly the officers aren't fully aware, or as was also mentioned during our meeting, there's a possibility that stigma is preventing some officers from, or some law enforcement staff from reaching out to avail themselves of these resources. So that is another thing that the committee will be focusing on. And then at the crux of it, we, as a subcommittee reporting to the police commission, are in a fantastic position to be able to make recommendations for the police commission to recommend to city council. So to be prepared for us at some point to bring some topics to discuss at the table overall for things for us to take to city council. And from there, I will move into the chief's report.
All right.
Adams, thank you.
Well, thank you. Chief Skinner had a few questions of him last, and Chief Skinner's away today, so you guys will have to bear with me. So good to see you all again, and some of you I haven't met. But there was a couple of questions about downtown cleanliness, and I'm going to leave those over for the chief for the next commission meeting so that he can more accurately address that. What's happening with our downtown initiatives is that's been centered right with the chief of police, and he's kind of spearheading that, even though it delves into the operational aspects of our police department. Commissioner Mogart, I believe you asked the chief last session some questions about ISO drugs. And just to kind of touch on what an ISO drug is, isotretinoin, something along those lines. Please don't don't dwell on my enunciation of the chemical. But it begins with ISO for ISO, and that's a synthetic drug that's manufactured in labs. Technically, fentanyl is a synthetic drug in and of itself. So the nature of these drugs is very dangerous, and much like fentanyl, they're synthesized in labs. They're mixed in with other drugs, usually pressed into a pill, and they're distributed on the street. And most of the time, the end user who thinks they're getting, for example, maybe a Valium, is getting another drug all entirely. And these ISO drugs have gained some prevalence, or ISO itself. It's a up and coming trend amongst the drug distributors. We haven't specifically seen, to my knowledge, at least Eugene Police has not experienced any cases involving ISO itself. However, it will come eventually. It will make its way over here, as will every other synthetic or designed drug that's out there. So that's the unfortunate part about a lot of these chemical compounds. And if the commission's not aware, why fentanyl is so dangerous is it will come in bulk powder form, and it's usually manufactured outside of this country and brought in pill form. But the way they do it is they will take large quantities of fentanyl, put it into a vat, add like a binding substance of some kind. Baby formula used to be very popular, and it's stirred up and then it's put into pill form. The problem is that the drug dealers or distributors or manufacturers don't take the time to really spin these drugs around in this vat a lot. And when they pour the powder out to press the pills, you will get a pill that's got almost entirely all fentanyl, and you may get one that has no fentanyl in it at all, just because of the way it's mixed. And that's really how these pills become so extraordinarily dangerous. They're on our streets in great quantities, and we're constantly seizing and taking these pills off the street. So that's a little bit of a high level, Commissioner Bogart, on what an ISO drug is. I think the actual manufacturing of the ISO drug goes back in the 50s. It was like fentanyl, manufactured for pain management. And so we do see this, and we are preparing for the future on this. And then, yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. And I think it was Commissioner Dominguez. Can I ask a question? Is the commission, or in some form of work, or in our cleanliness piece, and I'm sorry, I may have missed this, are we looking to design or build or support or endorse a mobile shower facility?
I got my controls mixed up. Okay, anyway, figure that out later. Sorry. So what we're doing is the AIA and the AIES are trying to create showers. We would like to investigate if there is a way to partner with the city, but this is a project that we're doing on our own. And just because it kind of connected with the whole cleanliness thing and creating the case for the cleanliness, which I sent out to Councilor Ye, it seems to be connected and related and could help downtown Eugene. So that's the connection, if that makes sense. So it's not really part of the commission itself, but I would like to use the resources at hand, hopefully, to be able to push it further, because I really do think it's going to help. That's all. Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. This is a great project, and I got to tell you, I happen to know a University of Oregon student by the last name of Adams that ran a project previously to build a shower trailer that was done through the Willamette Valley United Way in Mid-Willamette Valley, and through the Arches organization in Salem. It may be a place for you to look at, and I can connect you with that student if you'd like.
Oh, sure. That sounds great. Like, all the information is great. So we're still like designing things. We did like our first charrette. We have many iterations to go through. So yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Nothing
further to offer unless there's questions.
I have a question, DCS.
Yes, ma'am.
Is ISO treatable in Narcan?
Yes. Well, to some degree, yes. So one of the things is, to my knowledge, that ISO interacts with the body in a different way than your normal opioids do. So Narcan should treat ISO. but we've not had an experience where we've tried that. So
And what is
that
the
I
intended
can't-
effect of that drug? Is it supposed to be an upper or a downer or a
much alike,
sidewiser?
yeah, much alike you'll see with your opioids. You're going to get the pinpoint pupils. You're going to get a reduction in your bodily functions, reduced respiration, reduced heart rate. Very similar reactions. So, but what we're finding, or what I read, and what the DEA is reporting outward, is a lot of the time that this substance is being cut in with other substances. So, for example, where historically you had, say, for example, a morphine, or morphine was usually the normal one, and cocaine, you had like your speedball. So you're mixing an opioid and you're mixing a stimulant drug. Well, what we're finding is this is actually happening with both fentanyl and methamphetamine, but also in the East Coast, ISO and cocaine. So you're seeing this is the latest iteration of what would be, what was done in, throughout my career, and certainly before that, what was known as the speedball industry, that's now being done via pill form instead of injected with these powdered drugs. So kind of frightening, really, when you think about it.
Thank you for the very unwelcome crash course on street drugs.
Yeah. It's amazing what you see.
Shane said the same. That's John Belushi, 30 years later, just a different.
Well, and you think about what we're seeing now also is we're seeing fentanyl being smoked with methamphetamine. So, you're taking in fentanyl and methamphetamine, both drugs that are fighting each other. Just some of the things that we're seeing are really, really, really troubling.
Commissioner Moger, we had passed over you during commissioner comments. Do you have commissioner comments for us before we move to Dre Charles? Holly, do we have Dre in the lobby?
Not yet. Yeah, he's up at 6 o'clock, so he's got a couple more minutes. So we'll give him a few minutes here. Any other questions for DC Adams?
I'm not used to having time to ask
I
extra.
know.
How's it going on campus? How are these home games? You got 3 home games that are big coming up, and how are you dealing with the students, and how's the alcohol and the parties?
That's great. We've not had any incidents with any type of loud parties or anything. We've not had any confrontations. I hate to say it, but it's been a really, really, really great fall. And I think in part we have to give credit where credit's due to the University of Oregon, their student association, on, getting with their students and talking about, hey, these are some of the things you can and can't do. This is how you interact with the police department. And I think, Commissioner, you're already aware that the first touch point for a university campus party, even off campus, a university party, is the University of Oregon Police Department and not us. And so that's an organizational change and agreement that we've made with the University of Oregon Police Department, so that when there's a loud party off campus, when the police department shows up, it's UOPD who really kind of these kids fall under the purview of. So you would hope that there's a little bit more recognition and understanding there between that police entity and that's the constituents that they serve. So that seems to have worked really well. We've had no issues with the football games. Staffing a football game it's increasingly challenging, just simply because of the tone and tenor right now where we are with recruitments, with retirements, with the constant turnover of staff. And really, quite frankly, even though I think our recruiting team does a phenomenally good job, just trying to recruit police officers in the post George Floyd, post COVID age is difficult. So we're getting there, but it's slow incremental increases.
Holly, or Commissioner Lemons.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I just wanted to make sure that Deputy Chief Adams is going to be around for questions after the presentation from Dre.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not letting him go anywhere.
Perfect. Just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
I'm
Thank
gonna
you.
pretend I have that authority. I don't. Commissioner Dominguez?
Oh, actually, I just read an article today about scams and how apparently young people like ages 18 to 25 are falling prey to scammers. Apparently, they'll get called and told that they're going to go to jail if they don't send money over like some kind of an app. And I was thinking about it, and I kind of imagine that it might be something like for younger people, apps are something normal. It's completely normalized to them. So they're like, why wouldn't the police use this kind of thing? So just, I don't know if anybody's watching, but it's just like, I'm assuming that if they get a call, you could verify that that's not something that they need to do. Like if for some reason they owed a fee or like they missed a court date or whatever, they're not going to be arrested if they don't like send money over some kind of app. Can you just confirm real quickly just to verify that for the community?
Yeah, Commissioner, thank you for that. We're constantly pushing out information on these scams. The scammers are very, very, very convincing, but just for everybody's information, we do not ever phone anybody and ask for money. We do not ask for money over an app. If you have a warrant, we're not going to call you and say you have a warrant. We'll probably come knock at your door and say you have a warrant. We don't do anything like that. So at any point, if anybody ever receives a phone call that says, and they're very good because they'll actually look online. So for example, you can look online right now. You can see my picture. You can get my information. You can get my phone number. And the scammers are actually spoofing my phone number using voice over internet. They're calling people. It's purporting to be me. They're using my name and they're saying, send money or we're going to come arrest you or whatever. It's an absolute scam. We will never do that. We do not do that.
If you were to pay anything, just out of curiosity, you would never do it over an app, right? It would be like some other method.
Yeah, I've never heard of the payment going via an app, but I'm certain that, with today PayPal, for example, or something else, I'm certain that the criminal element has figured out how to actually make an app look pretty legitimate as well. We do not ever ask for any payment of any kind via the internet, via an app, or otherwise.
Okay,
we
thank
do
you.
have, and we will have in our lobby a kiosk that we're going to use for the online reporting system, for example, and then secondly, for paying fines and bails after hours. But we don't do that online. You'd have to come down here and access the kiosk. So,
Thank you.
Para?
Yeah, thank you. The app that they're using is called Zelle. So they're asking for payment through Zelle. But I actually had a question earlier about the requirements. I know you said that a psych eval is required, but is a consultation with a licensed therapist also required?
I'm going to have to ask a question, Commissioner. When you say a licensed therapist, are you talking about a medical provider, psychologist, for example, versus a mental health therapist? And is there both going on? Can you?
I would say like they're not a whole like it wouldn't necessarily have to be a psychologist, but I would say someone who's licensed in the state of Oregon to treat people and talk to them.
Therapy versus medical treatment in a psychiatric or psychological setting.
It's an interesting question. We contract with a specific doctor. If the employee wanted to do something separate, but it accomplished the goals of what we want to accomplish, I think that would be acceptable, but I can't answer that one definitively. I've not heard this one before, so I don't know that I can definitively answer that.
Thank you.
Holly, quickly before we get to Drake, when you are collecting the information about the Narcan thing, should you please have Sergeant Smith point us to any policy regarding the officers carrying on?
You bet.
Thank you. And now we have Dre Charles from the Office of something, and I can never ever remember fully, so I'll let you say it.
See, you got him too. He's laughing.
That's the typical face he uses when he sees me, because that's about as eloquent as I usually am at Dre. You got to come off mute though.
So my name is Dre Charles. I'm the Office of Equity and Community Engagement.
Yeah, what he said.
I am the city's Human Rights and Equity Analyst. Is it up for me for presentation now?
Yes, it's all you. No pressure, but all eyes are on you.
Do you want to share screen? One
While
second.
you're doing that, I'm going to have Damon come take a seat at the table and we will formally introduce you after Dre's presentation. Damon Hawkins is the new president of the NAACP of Lake County. He also happens to be my husband. But we invited him here this evening to also be able to provide some input on Dre's report.
Go into this. So are you seeing the actual PowerPoint? Or are you seeing?
We're seeing the program, not the presentation.
I don't know why it does that. 1 second. Probably because I have 87 screens. Does not help.
Take your time.
Yeah, no worries.
I think some of us are under the impression that the city of Eugene internet does not play well with Zoom anyway.
It does not.
Mm-hmm. There we
Perfect. We
go.
can see it. Thank you, Drake.
Woo! Small tech victories.
Yes.
So like I mentioned, I'm Dre Charles. I'm the city's Human Rights and Equity Analyst. So giving a presentation this evening, both grounding us in the Rights Assistance Program, which is one of two halves of the Human Rights Program that the city offers, and providing data and information around the 2022 Hate and Bias Report. So with that, the city has actually a pretty robust history when it comes to providing, human rights supports and or assistance to the community. This started back in the 70s with the Human Rights Municipal Code, which founded a lot of the work that is within our office and my position in particular. But most recently, there's been a stream of different ordinances and resolutions that city council has passed to really demonstrate to the community that we are a community centered on belonging and inclusion. We really want to emphasize that this is a place that, regardless of your identity, you belong here. So first and foremost, I really wanted to highlight and emphasize that this is reported crimes. According to the National Crime Victimization Survey, approximately 56% of activity goes unreported. That's for both bias crimes and incidents. As you can see, for bias crimes for last year, we're continuing to see a reduced number of hate crimes being reported. Between 2013 and 2020, we averaged right around 45 bias crimes being reported a year, outside of that large spike we saw in 2017. For the past 2 years now, we've seen a pretty sharp decline, and that's continued into this year. So as of last week, EPD sends us a weekly check-in spreadsheet with bias crimes that have been investigated in the community, and we're sitting at 23 for 2023. Ooh, I don't know why that happened. There we go. So when we disaggregate the data, looking at the particular charge descriptions, we've also seen an uptick in person crimes for hate crimes. Historically, we've had more property crimes in this category. It's been like a 60-40 to a 50-50 split. But for 2022, assault, disorderly conduct, and threat and or menacing were the top categories for hate crimes. And when we look at that even further in terms of targeted communities for hate crimes, the Black community has continued to be the #1 targeted community. And then a quick note that there are more charges listed here than hate crimes reported. And that's just because crimes can have more than one charge, but just wanted to flag that in case people were curious. And so diving into the non-criminal hate incidents. So for incidents that don't rise to level of criminality, we still capture those reports within our office. Historically, we've had an online reporting form that folks can submit their reports to, and we can help provide those victim supports when it's not criminal. At the start of 2023, we transitioned to doing all intake of reports through the Oregon DOJ. And that's because we realized that folks were reporting in 2 separate places, and it was potentially diluting the data. So we streamlined that process. So intakes are happening through there. And then when victims still need like support and assistance, they refer back to our office for that localized support. But for 2022, we still were collecting direct reports to our office, and we received 34 direct reports. And so when we disaggregated the data, race and ethnicity continue to be that #1 driving category. And of the 16 listed race-based incidents, 13 of them targeted the Black community. And then for the religious piece, almost exclusively targeting the Jewish community. And then so this is hate incidents captured by all protected classes. So that can be a bit confusing. But similar to how crimes can have multiple charges, individuals can be targeted based on multiple aspects of their identity. We're intersectional beings by nature. And so we captured our reports based on primary, like targeted community, and then individuals can also include other aspects of their identity. They feel like this may be included or a possibility. We saw some upticks there when we look at the intersectional nature of the data. We go from 34 to 57, but still it's race and ethnicity by a long shot, unfortunately. And this is looking at the data around specific targeted communities. So like I mentioned previously, the Black community is by far the most targeted community for hate incidents and hate crimes. The Jewish community is the second most targeted community. And then a quick caveat with the LGBTQ plus here. So you notice that there's LGBTQ plus and trans. We're seeing a trend in starting to separate trans from LGBTQ plus. And that's really because it's more on gender identity and expression more than a sexual orientation. And so kind of starting to provide that distinction for folks, because they really are being targeted, like not exclusively, but quite separate from that sexual orientation and expression. And so the next few slides are real local examples of hate bias activity in Eugene. So for folks, if they want to tune out of this section or have some concerns, and just wanted to flag that for you, a quick trigger warning. It can be a bit uncomfortable, but it is unfortunately our reality. So hate graffiti that we see in town, it's quite a few swastikas and things of that nature, centered around white supremacy, usually. The white pride and SS symbols that you may see there at the bottom, the middle of the screen, those were shared near an elementary school in Eugene. For folks who are confused or curious at what the 1488 represents, it's shorthand for 14 words, and Hail Hitler, as 8 is the 8th letter, or H is the 8th letter of the alphabet, and people thought they were being clever. Historically, swastikas target the Jewish community, but in recent years, we've seen a transition of that being used to target multiple identities, multiple communities. So we're starting to also capture that in intersectional ways.
Do you know what the 14 words are?
Not off the top of my head, but it has to do with reclaiming the glory of the white race.
I can say it if that's okay. We must secure the existence of our people and a future for white children. Just for everybody else's education on it.
I will let you read these firsthand accounts.
And who's tracking this information? Who's taking the pictures?
It depends. Usually it's witnesses and or victims. They'll document things. EPD also documents crime scenes. But things get reported through our form as well. Historically anyway, there's a section for folks to attach media and other things they wanted to share. So again, we're seeing the swastika and this concept of securing the white race. And so I wanted to help provide a brief differentiator on hate crimes versus bias incidents and some of how that may be interchangeable. Oftentimes people more accurately know things as hate crimes. In Oregon, it's listed as bias crime, and people get a bit confused by that. They're really the same thing. As just in Oregon, revised statutes and in our own laws, it's captured as bias crimes. But the simple equation there is a crime motivated by bias equals a hate crime, right? So there's often this sort of conflation with this as well, though. So individuals may experience a crime and they identify with a marginalized community, and so they'll say, like, I've been victimized by a crime and I'm Black. When in reality, it has to be, I've been victimized by a crime because I'm Black. So it's not the and, it is the because. So really wanted to emphasize that it has to be that because. And then looking at the protected categories, we've actually got quite a few. I think we have one of the most robust list of protected categories nationwide. Federal law is what it is. Everyone should have that nationwide, but Oregon and Eugene in particular have been leading the charge in terms of protected classes for the community. Please note that housing status is just for bias crimes in the second degree.
Sorry, where second degree is?
Oh, what was that?
Where second degree is what?
I will leave that definition to the EPD that's in the room. But realistically, the simplest way to kind of capture that, because EPD will capture bias crimes targeting unhoused community in general. Like we had an unhoused individual who's assaulted a few months back by a pair of homeowners because he was camped too close to their house and they didn't like it. And EPD went and captured that. And then we provide those victim supports to help get them a new tent and connect them with the Oregon DOJ. But in terms of bias incidents, that's been a gap. So if an unhoused individual experiences hate speech, as we're actually conveniently on the slide, there are no supports that exist for them currently. So it's a gap that is being currently discussed. The Homelessness and Poverty Work Group of the Human Rights Commission is actively having these conversations on how they can expand that in city code. But that is their role as advocates. I did want to touch on hate speech just a bit, because oftentimes hate speech can shake someone's sense of safety. It naturally comes with harm, trauma, things of that nature. And also we have to recognize that hate speech is protected speech under the First Amendment, as difficult as that may be at times. We're seeing that happen in the HRC, we see it happen in the city council, where individuals come and espouse these hateful views. But having to remain mindful that hate speech is protected speech unless they cross the line of like providing realistic threats and or, you know, something that's credible. So someone can come to you and say, I don't like Black people. And it's like, okay, that's your right to be a bigot, I guess. But if someone to say, I don't like Black people and I'm going to attack this guy as soon as I get close, like that's a conversation like, let's call EPD and prevent this. Because that's when you cross that line, because that's credible. Now someone can say, I don't like Black people and I'm going to blow up Africa. That's not realistic. Like they don't have the actual means to do that. And so finding that balance. And I'll keep this slide brief. I just wanted to help clarify, and this is something I had a conversation with Eugene Springfield leadership cohort the other day. Like active vandalization, just call 911. That should be a pretty straightforward thing. But there's often confusion around what to do when we see hate graffiti in the community. So if it's your own property, again, call EPD, like that is a crime. Public property, send that through Public Works or email our office and we can do that for you so that the appropriate staff can help go clean that up. And then someone else's property, it depends, it's a gray area. Because again, individuals can espouse their hateful views and be bigots. And if that's what they're choosing to do, then they're choosing to do that. And we can't say for certain that someone didn't actively paint that themselves. It's worth having a conversation and asking like, hey, did you know that you have XYZ on your fence? They say, yes, I put it there. Then that's unfortunate and kind of the end of that conversation. If they say, no, I didn't know that, and then you just kind of circle them back to the call EPD and get that documented. And then a quick brief on this, civil rights violations. It's like the simplest distinction for me for this kind of that trick is just civil rights violations are often civil and not criminal. You see that in employment, housing, public accommodations, things of that nature. And last but not least, the flow chart. So this flow chart, and we have these wallet cards available if individuals want them. We often share them out at tabling and events that we do. This is kind of a process map for experiencing or witnessing a hate incident. Like, is it an emergency? Yes, call 911. It's an emergency. Why are we having this conversation? Like, just call 911. No, this is criminal or non-criminal. If you're for certain that it's criminal, call non-emergency. If you're not certain it's criminal or need help kind of figuring that out, that's when you call the hotline or email our office. We can help differentiate that for you and get you to the correct place. For example, if it's a civil rights violation, it wouldn't exist with either our office or EPD, but it may be somewhere like Bowley. So we can help direct you to where you need to be for that. If anyone wants these wallet cards, we have a ton of them, so please just let me know. contact information, and Q&A. I saved a ton of time for that because we often have quite a few questions from the Police Commission.
So I'm gonna move the agenda just a little bit, and then Viv, I'll start with you for questions. Demond, I would love for you to introduce yourself as a participant in this conversation. And then we will open up the floor for questions to you, Andre, and DC Adams.
I am Demond Hawkins. I am Jensina Hawkins' husband.
He's my plus one.
No, I'm currently the new president of the NAACP here, the executive committee chair as well. I've been in the community in Oregon about 4 years now. Been in with the NAACP about 3.5 years. I've been on the exec committee team for about 2.5 years and been president about 2.5 months. This is some of this stuff is new to me, but the equity work I've been doing that for over 2 years now. So this has kind of been my main focus. And in this role, I've been mostly focused on addressing health disparities, social determinants of health, and things like that, and addressing those needs in that sense. So the NAACP has the education committee that we're working with our youth, make sure the education piece is being addressed there. Our health committee is making sure we're getting access to better health care, but also access to the workforce in healthcare. Environmental climate justice, working with how to grow our own food and teaching people how to eat right and their environmental concerns. And then we have our legal redress, right? And that was one that I kind of learned lastly coming into this role, was that there are a phone number that people are calling, asking about support and help with things that are happening in whether it be Eugene, Springfield, or just all of Lane County, looking for support from the NAACP. So that was one of the biggest things I've been trying to get set up and going with that committee, making sure that we are able to answer those calls, but support those folks with resources, and also kind of get some of the trends down and find out what's going on, if there's certain areas, if there's certain things that are happening that we can help support, and then try to figure out ways where we can actually come up with solutions to, again, meet those needs and try to make changes generationally for us overall. I would love to at some point to come back when that committee's got its feet under them, kind of did some of this data diving in that, and be able to present to you those things. It is I'm also a human rights commissioner. So I've kind of heard some of this before, and seeing that 2% of the population is 80% of the hate and bias crimes, it's alarming. And keep in mind, again, like Dre mentioned, 50% of those are likely not even being reported at all. So some of those things we might be capturing on our end, whereas it kind of gives a chance to paint a bigger picture of that. I'm one of those people who like to come with solutions. Don't have one here. This is an area where there's really is need for people to kind of collaborate and come together, because it's a warning flag with fire coming. I truly believe that.
Okay, we'll start with questions. Commissioner Wynn.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Dre, I have a question for you. I know that you came and did a presentation before, so it's good to see you again. I think at the last time when you were here doing the presentation, I pointed out that certain population may not be more willing to call in and report their experience with hate crime. So I'm just kind of wondering, has the Human Rights Commission thought of maybe some kind of way to track down these folks and in order to to get them to be included in these statistics that you're gathering? Do you know if there's any movement on that?
Yeah, so the Human Rights Commission actually did quite a bit of community engagement and outreach this past year. From tabling events like Black Cultural Festival, the Asian Celebration. And in each of these tabling events, they were providing education to the community about how they can report avenues for supports, and helping them kind of navigate that process. Like I said, we have a ton of those wallet cards, and a large part of that is due to the amount of community engagement that they did this past year. But also there's been an increase in like ways to report. So like I said, we now have a partnership with the Oregon Department of Justice, their bias response hotline. And one of the kind of drawing factors to that is that their bias response hotline has translation services in over 100 languages. So whereas individuals who call our office, we may not be able to provide that assistance as quickly or as smoothly, they have those resources to be able to do that. And they're actively in the process of doing a community campaign to continue to push awareness on where and how to report. So there has been some effort and movement on that end. Their numbers and data aren't included in what I shared just now. They're actually, it's quite a bit more that they've captured from the Eugene area. And there's also some gaps that exist that have popped up, or we've kind of noted from City of Eugene programs, right? So one thing that I had kind of coming into this role really wanted to clean up and emphasize is where are the gaps in our reporting and how can we eliminate them? I don't want gaps in my data if I can avoid it. And what we realized pretty quickly into that is that City of Eugene staff are also experiencing hate and bias activity throughout the course of their workday, but that's not being captured. And so there's not a process in place currently to capture that information. But I've had ongoing conversations with, say, like the public library, for example, where they have their own incident reporting form, and they have a way to be able to like document bias as it happens to staff, which is also not captured in this report, as we haven't actually vetted that process. But they had 30 incidents of hate and bias, particularly hate speech, last year, targeting again the Black, Jewish, and LGBTQ plus communities.
Yeah, I think, just as a follow-up, I think you definitely don't have your works cut out for you. Because, and I say this because coming, as an Asian American who is also LGBT, who also has a disability, I can tell you that, just from a standpoint of being an AAPI, is really, really difficult for you to break that through that, barrier for people to feel comfortable enough to report, just because, the mindset is very different when you're talking about AAPI that are born here versus and raised here versus, AAPI that were born in, let's say, China, right? And came over through immigration or whatever. But the point is that, folks that came from other places perceive reporting these type of hate crime. Maybe they don't even experience, racial type related hate crimes. They experience other types of crime. So they don't even know what this is. And they don't see the usefulness of coming forward and saying, hey, I've experienced this. What good does it do? That's the thing. If you're going to ask an Asian American to report it, one of the things is, they're going to want to know, what are you going to do with this information? How is this going to help me and my community? If this is just for, to go into this well, of information and just sits there, they're not going to waste their time, so I'm pretty sure this is probably the same mindset with a lot of community. It's not just API. I see Bonnie nodding her head. And so, I think one of the challenges that you would have to tackle is, what do you do with this information? How do you make use of it? And then we'll be able to then communicate that to these different groups, different community groups. Otherwise, you're not going to get them to voluntarily come forth with the reports. And then the other question I have is, are you getting some of these data from EPD? Are you getting it from other, sources? Where are you getting the informations from? How, is there any collaboration, to get more, to cast a wider net?
Yeah, so I'll work from the beginning and come to this question. What you're referencing is a real phenomena, and it's a challenge that even individuals who know the system and how to report often fall into. Like I've experienced multiple bias incidents downtown, and I find myself like, do I even want to go through the hassle of reporting this? Because it's oftentimes can feel like this is just another thing that I need to do, or this is like just another day of being a person of color in a white dominant space. And so really trying to break out of that mindset can be difficult. There are some additional supports that exist for individuals who do report, particularly like the Oregon DOJ has a victim compensation fund, or victim compensation fund that they have. So for victims who experience hate, bias, or discrimination, whether it be crimes or incidents, they have funds available to help them reduce that harm. So whether the individual needs like therapy and counseling after that traumatic incident and they don't have insurance, the DOJ can help cover that. If the individual needs help relocating after experiencing something hateful in their community, the DOJ can help cover that. I don't feel safe, I need cameras in my house, the DOJ will cover that. And so those things exist. It's a matter of spreading that information out to the community, which is what they're doing through their community campaign currently. There's been a handful of bias incidents recently that, again, targeting the Black community, where we don't feel safe staying in this complex any further, or really staying in town. And they've up and moved to Portland. They were just fed up and done with it. And so the NAACP and the Oregon DOJ actually helped partner on that and help take those victims up to Portland and tour houses and go through that process. And the DOJ helped pay for that process. So those supports do exist. It's about spreading awareness currently, and also just breaking through that mindset of it's just one more thing to do. And it's not easy. And you're correct. It's I don't envy me for that task either. But I'm gonna keep at it. In terms of, sorry, my baby keeps bumping into things. I'm just like, kid, stop running into walls. In terms of the data, so we do still get information from EPD. They send over a weekly bias crime spreadsheet to our office. It shifts and filters here and there based on the case status. And then at the year end, they'll also provide a year-end spreadsheet, and that's how we capture the bias crimes. We get the information from the Eugene Library, like I mentioned, and having internal conversations on how we can expand those reports. The city just recently instituted an equity community engagement network. So it's a staff from each department having equity conversations and how we can move the needle internally. And this is a topic that's going to come up soon. It's because I want my reports and data expanded and cleaned up. And the bulk of that data comes again from the Oregon DOJ. So they've got partnerships with organizations like the ADL, and other task forces that are actually tracking hate and bias community activity nationwide. But for example, the Oregon DOJ for last year in Eugene reported, I want to say 130 bias crimes and/or incidents for Eugene specific. The caveat to that being they capture their data based on the number of unique victims, whereas the city has historically captured it by unique incidents. So after I go clean that data and kind of process through it, there's about 60 unique bias incidents. So there is quite a bit more there. I'm not sure if that's related to their uptick from a community engagement perspective, or if it's just part of that process that we've shifted over to them taking those intakes. But there is something there. And it's compound this further is we're seeing this uptick also at a school level, right? So if we look at the 4J school district, for example, they went from 165 reported bias incidents the last school year, this or 2 years ago now, I guess, and for this past school year, it jumped to 711. So huge increase. But it's one of those things, like, we know these students aren't leaving the community 9 times out of 10, and yet we're not able to actively engage in that conversation and prevent some of that, because they're their own government entity. And so we're having these conversations like, can we support you? And oftentimes the school district's like, leave us alone. We're going to do what we're going to do. We got this. And so we kind of just wait for that problem to bleed over into the community, and then it's an us problem. So it's multifaceted, and so a lot goes into that. But there's quite a few data sources, and I want more. So if you have any ideas, I'm always open to having another conversation and seeing if we can't pick each other's brains.
That would be great.
Thanks, Dre. I've got 2 more hands up. I reallocated some of Damon's time to your Q&A. But we can't have all the questions go that long. Dr. Booker, you're next.
Given that, well, first of all, I think it's evident just looking at the data that this state is comfortable with racism. Even on a smaller scale, the city is comfortable with racism. You can see the data being collected, and we probably should take a page out of, as Commissioner V was saying, the AAPI, what's the data being collected for if you're not using it? Obviously, the Black community is the target of a lot of the racial hatred that's happening. So I guess my question would be to this. I read the packet, and it said, looking ahead, the city of Eugene will continue its efforts to prevent and respond to hate and bias activity. That's pretty much what the looking ahead summarized in terms of a plan. So there's really no action plan, I should say, to protect our city's Black, African, Moor community and its citizens. So given all the data that was shown, and we have 2 city councilors here, I would like to know how they feel about the fact that, and not a BIPOC answer, but how do you feel about your Black, African American, Moor community being attacked? And is the city having an action plan? Now that we have data that's been collected for several years, does the city have an actual action plan to protect its Black, African, and Moor citizens, community members?
Well, Silky, I really appreciate you asking that. I think Dre has really highlighted how it's a complicated situation. I know, as a white person, it's hard to put myself in that space where I'm a person that has to deal with that every single day, all the time. But I can imagine it's got to be, you're just done with it, and you're frustrated, and you want to see action, and you deserve it. First of all, we'll just say that. I think it's complicated to say, what is the city going to do, right? I think the first thing that we've tried to do, at least in recent times, is to look inward at our own place, in our own departments, and our own staff, and how can we do better, because we're not doing well. I mean, Dre even said that our own staff are dealing with racism every day, and it's not always the public. Sometimes it's from other staff. And so I think that's one of the big things that we're trying to focus on, is how can we do better in our own house, in our own staff, and modeled behavior that we want to see in other workplaces, and in schools and in families. When Dre said that 4J says they've got this, they don't. I have kids who aren't white, they don't got it. The city doesn't got it. many of us don't got it. Lastly, I would say, I would hope that our staff are leaning on organizations like the NAACP, people like yourselves, people on this commission that have that lived experience to help us to do, better every day. I know that's not a very satisfying answer. I don't have like the 5-step program. Maybe Alan does. I know our staff, that's why we hire people like Jay to help us who have expertise and background in this, to help us figure out what that process is. And our strategic plan has an entire section on belonging, and we're hoping to have tangible actions in that section soon. But I can't give you those today.
Oh, Counselor.
So, good question, Soki, but racism is pervasive in this country. It's not just here, it's everywhere. It's worse than other places, but it's here. And it transcends the city government. It's a societal problem. And but the city has certain responsibilities to protect people and also to monitor this and do all this. So we have the Human Rights Commission, we have DRE, we have the police department, which has training on sensitivity, on race, and so they're also charged with the responsibility of protecting people, but everybody, of course. And so I guess I'd turn the question back on to you, Soki, which is, do you have a specific idea about what you think you'd like to see the city doing more than what we're already doing, or the police department doing more than what we're already doing?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, it's a ton that could be done. The question is are the powers to be going to actually implement what can actually be done? And what's missing is cultural connection. So, because I guess we have a consensus that there's no plan of protection. So what's missing is the cultural connection aspect. So you have to ask those people who are at the bottom of those numbers of being discriminated against, which is i.e. the Caucasian community, how do you feel protected? What's going on in your community that makes you feel so protected every day? How do we achieve that level of protection and that level of societal cohesiveness that, the lowest people on that discrimination chart feel? Because obviously they've come up with some kind of plan or some kind of community cohesiveness that prevents them from being targeted. So seeing that the Black community is the lowest percentage statewide, even lower in Eugene, yet the highest targeted racially, demographically, why aren't those at the top of the not being targeted chart, not protecting those who are at the bottom of the being targeted chart? That's
Your hand up, we'll take you out of turn since you're a guest.
Say it again.
I'm asking if Dre has a response to that. His hand is up. Since he's a guest, I'll take him out of turn.
I was going to provide a little additional response to Dr. Booker. So on a staff level, the biggest things that I've seen that kind of help move the needle on some of this really do come from the educational pieces. So how do we provide that education to the community that brings people together? Oregon has a long-standing history of just being, it's founded as a white utopia, so you can kind of track from there. So really, like, breaking the ice and providing some of that awareness that doesn't exist in Eugene is a huge element of that, right? There are conversations about how do we create more multicultural spaces and programming in the city, as that's a huge gap. Melissa Covino is working on that through the needs assessment process to see, like, what is the community going to say to us around like spaces, programming, services, et cetera, to help provide that to the community. Because oftentimes the community, particularly marginalized communities, are isolated in Eugene. And more so, I mean, when we look at the Black community, you and I are very well aware that even amongst the Black community, it's very divided. So if we can't come together and provide that space and connection and really bond together to provide that, like we don't have much of a chance to move the needle because we're such a low like number in terms of demographics. We're only like I said, less than 2%. And so really there's a need to bond together to help push that forward, which there's been a gap. And so oftentimes what we've seen is that if individuals are isolated and marginalized, they don't want to stay in Eugene. Like it's that common trend that you and I have discussed more than once in the past, where it's like Eugene has a great history of like pulling Black people into Eugene, and it is terrible at keeping people here. We don't have spaces or supports for them. And so looking at those pieces, fostering community, then we're like, okay, we have community. Now we can push back against some of these things. Whereas it's very easy to target and attack communities when they're one-on-one and like in isolation, but attacking a community of people is difficult. That's why you see that happen in broader communities to that same extent. Like,
yeah, but I feel like I get that, but I feel like it's like asking the Black community to solve its own issue when we're not the one causing the problem. So again, it's not for us to answer that question. It's for the people that are entrusted in those positions that's supposed to have the cultural connection to have the answer to that question. And they are supposed to create an action plan to protect this African, Black, and more community. So it's not for us to come up with that plan. And you can't do any more reporting than what's already been done. How many times are you going to report? Like we lead each category every single year. And again, I would like to refer back to Commissioner V's comment, data in a drawer for what? Like we're keeping all this data for what? Nobody's coming up with an action plan. And it's not about being, oh, I get you guys are fed up. If you're not fed up, it shouldn't fall back on me being fed up. If you guys aren't fed up, then it won't change. That means that you're comfortable with the culture of racism that is very transparent throughout this city. So if you're comfortable with it, the city gonna be comfortable with it. So it's not up to us to come up with our own action plan. It's those who are entrusted in those positions that are supposed to have that cultural connection to come up with that action plan, because we all fall under this umbrella of community involvement and support and love. So if we're doing that, then those people that are entrusted to have that cultural connection should be saying, you know what, Dr. Booker, I have a plan that we're going to sit down with this organization, NAACP will be a good one to start with, saying that a part of their mission is to eliminate discrimination. So perfect place to start. But we have a plan to work with NAACP and our police department to protect our citizens. And this is what we're going to do. Not only that, we're going to be working with the Chamber of Commerce. And this is what they're going to do. You have to talk to the powers that be. So if you're not talking and you're comfortable and you're not fed up, then all we're doing is just talking about crap that's going to continue. Keep collecting data for nothing. I'm done with my.
So I appreciate what you're saying, Silky, but
May I have a moment? We have about 15 minutes left for this conversation, and we do have more questions coming up. So I would like to make sure that our questions are brief and succinct and focused on what the police commission can actually affect. This is a wonderful topic that we could spend years of our lives debating forever with various things that are very relevant to every single one of us in multiple capacities. But given the time constraints, I would like to make sure that we are able to keep the conversation within the purview of the police commission. Judge Lyman, your hand is up.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Yeah, I was going to say, this is the police commission, and we should be focused on what can the police do. And I think, Dr. Booker, your question is, what are the police doing? I'm a member of a community that's 2.4% of the national population. The FBI director told Congress last week that we're the victim of 60% of all the religious hate. So I'm right with you. And as a community here in Eugene, we ask the police on Friday nights and Saturday to go by our places of worship and to pay attention that the risk is higher for us. And that's the kind of questions I would be engaging DC Adams, who's here, or the department, or as a commission. It's what are the police doing to help vulnerable communities, be it Black or Jewish or Muslim or whatever. We're in a tough spot here, and so, but I just think constructively, that's what we're doing.
Thank you, Judge Lang.
Thank you.
Councilor Zelenka, I interrupted you. Please continue.
No, I appreciate what Silky was saying. My experience is that government doesn't tend to be very proactive. It tends to be reactive, meaning that if you ask the government the city to say, go solve this problem, they toil on it for a while and they come up with some things, but it's much, much more effective, much more straightforward, and a hell of a lot quicker if you actually propose something and say, this is what I think you should do. What do you think of that? So I would challenge you to go put together your top 3 bullet points and say, this is what I think this plan should look like. And we can react to that.
Counselor, I think he asked what your thoughts were, not what your plan was.
Commissioner
If you want to talk offline, I would be happy whenever, if you're interested, obviously, I think I have your email somewhere, so I will email you. And if you want to talk about, so we don't use up time today, I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you, Councilor Yang. Commissioner Parham?
Same.
Yeah, I have a couple of specific quick questions. One is there spatial data available on where these crimes are happening in the city? And based on that type of data, where are the majority of the crimes happening? My next question is going to be what type of education is the city currently offering to make the community aware of the danger that Black folks face in this community, and to make it specific to the police department? What type of engagement is the force having, and what type of emphasis is being put by the city council and by the department on making Black people in the city feel safer?
Drake, can I ask you to take that one offline with Commissioner Parham? I know you've provided on your report, there is a map showing the location of that, and then the rest of the conversation, I would love to have that one offline. Commissioner Lemons.
Thank you, Vice Chair, and thank you, Dre, for that presentation. It's very hard for the OEC to pull that off. One quick question. I'll connect out of respect for your time and the agenda. One quick question. Outside of like duplication of data, which can be controlled for, are there other concerns regarding different collection sites, as you were like alluding to with the school district and the library?
Yeah, we can talk about this at length after this. You have my email, but just keep it brief. With the school district as a prime example, so they collect their data based on type of harassment, right? ODE requires them to capture data on harassment, and they just have a bias indicator marked for that. So it's just a bulk number. They don't actually have any sort of aggregate or disaggregate based on community. And so there's we have 711 bias incidents or bias types of harassment. They don't actually tell us who's being targeted. So it's, in terms of actionability, it's basically useless.
All right, Commissioner Hawkins.
So I appreciate all the feedback and the conversation here. I think it's been great. Dr. Booker, you're absolutely right. My concern when I first started seeing these things is that it's an actual real problem. And I felt like it was just like, okay, we just have some more data about this. This is like, we've heard this before. But I just want to flag that without actually putting action together on addressing these issues, it's going to actually evolve into something else. much worse than we really wanted for our community, right? It's like somebody being bullied at school for a long time, and then all of a sudden they react, right? Or a football game, and somebody's been being messed with the entire time in the football game. Then they go off and they're like, "Why did he do that? What's wrong with him?" Right? But the actual thing is that something was going on, and the support systems, the resources in the community that was supposed to be there weren't there in the first place. So that's why it really is an important part of like trying to figure out that actual solution. I like the idea of going by certain areas that are heavily targeted, but the problem is with the actual African American community here is that there actually isn't a community there because of how African Americans came into this community. They had to blend in, so there's not actual community. They're spread out in between, which is why we have these factions in here. So there really is it really is complex, but you know it should be a focus.
Dre?
And just to compound that a bit further, historically, we do see increases in bias activity in election years, and we are rolling into an election year. So there is a need for more proactive work being done both in the community and through the city at large. So,
Commissioner Dominguez?
Thank you. I have two questions. The first one is there like a standard format for reporting data? And I'm just curious, like, I didn't hear that Centro Latino is a place to report. So I guess I'm wondering, like, is there something that you could just kind of format and just be like, here are different community groups you can like, your people can like report and it'll fit our formatting or whatever? Like, is that a thing? Do you have a form or like some kind of format?
so there is not a universal format for reporting that exists in the community currently. This is actually a conversation I had with the former president of the NAACP around their reporting. So they have a reporting form for that, like President Hawkins was referencing previously with the Legal Redress Committee, but their form didn't have the information necessary to really like highlight those needs, and there's a lot of gaps and like duplicate things that were in there. So I'm actively working with the NAACP to clean up their reporting form to like streamline those processes. And a similar conversation with Now Plaza. How do we provide like a universal standard so that when these things come through, if they're going to take them internally as where people feel comfortable reporting, they can then share that with the Oregon DOJ. So that is a community conversation that I'm having. Yes.
Okay, great. And then is there a DOJ handout about like the resources?
Yeah, so on their website, they actually have a robust list of resources. I can pass that along.
I mean, is it something that you can like pair, I guess is what I'm getting at. It's more about like the people that need those resources. Like, is it just something that hopefully comes together? Like, here's how you report and here's also the resources, by the way. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it's a yes and. So yes, that the resources exist for reporting and how to report and the supports that exist. Accessing the supports is a bit more tricky. You have to go through either a like individual like myself, who's like a trusted reporting agency for the Oregon DOJ, or through their bias response hotline, and they walk you through like the application process and kind of documentation stuff like that. But it's not like difficult process, but it's just a couple extra steps.
So when you do standardize everything and start like making that available to different places in the community, something that would be perfectly paired with that would be like, it's just like, just so you know, and this is how you would report it to the DOJ, and these are the resources. My other question is, you said that the school system is their own thing and they don't want the police involved in any kind of way. How were you envisioning the police being involved, or what kind of help do you think you could provide, I guess is what I'm curious about.
I think there's a bit of clarification needed there because I did mention the police with the school districts. So for bias crimes that occur in school districts, they're required to report that, and the police do respond. We've seen a few bias crimes in school districts where EPD has responded to that. Also some federal agencies as well. It's mostly for the bias incident pieces, right? Because that happens on a pretty much daily basis in school
Mhm.
districts.
Okay.
And there's no process currently for them to actively capture that data, whether you look at 4J or Bethel School District. Like in my own capacity, like I sit on Bethel school boards. I'm having that conversation with that district and move the needle because I care about that and something that I feel strongly about, passionate about.
You're a kid, yeah.
But in general, there's just not an infrastructure in place for that. And part of that is due to legislation. ODE requires district to capture data type of harassment, whether that be like bullying or like physical altercations, etc. But they don't require them to capture like who's being targeted and or why. It's just like literally a checkbox that says there was bias present. And so it really is pretty useless data. And we can't force other jurisdictions to act. So we can provide best practices and recommendations and have those conversations, but it's really up to them to move the needle internally if they so choose. And it's also up to community advocates to push on districts to make that move, similar to how this conversation is going toward like city council, right? How do we advocate to push forward?
Okay, so if I may, just real quickly, Counselor Ye, for example, so maybe this is something, I feel like you have to get the kids early, right? So maybe, I don't know how, I know it's like there's 4J, I don't know how any of the school system works, but having a program kind of like the, what is it, the belonging program? So you have your staff do that, so why not have the kids do something like that? Granted, I did go to your belonging training and I thought it was kind of weird, but I like the idea behind it, and I think that that would be great for students. So is there a way for, like for that to be part of like Eugene, where you like you make the kids go there, or maybe it's like an intervention thing. So for example, for me, mine was a English intervention where like there was a special program for me to go to learn English and like make sure that like I could communicate with everybody. But maybe there is an intervention program for the kids that are bullying and maybe there's like a program that you can do where it's just like stop being racist or biased or something like that. So I think it's about getting the kids early. And if people want, if parents that are racist want their kids to go into the school system, like they're forced to be educated by the school system. So anyway, just it's one little tidbit that I can give you. That's all.
Could you please put your contact information in the chat so that we can all grab it from there as well as from the slides that you shared? It sounds like a lot of these conversations could have a whole lot more to offer. Scott, I see your hand, but I want to take Commissioner Mogart first, just because you've already had a turn and Commissioner Mogart has been very quiet so far, if that's okay. Commissioner Mogart?
Yeah, hi, thank you. So have you been working or partnering with the Community Alliance of Lake County?
Yes. So CALC has recently instituted a coalition of sorts to discuss this very topic in terms of hate and bias in schools. Indigo Amaris is spearheading that process.
Okay. The only reason why I knew the 14 words and the HH, I've worked with them before, so we've done hate and bias stuff. So it's a really important partner. That's it.
Thank you. Commissioner Levens, how fast can you be?
Super quick, and feel free to follow up, just like we're going to follow up over other stuff through the HRC or email. But based upon your comfortability and work within the data, anything that the police commission can do, or any trends or issues that we should be looking out for, and lastly, anything that we could recommend to City Council be working on to help your office's efforts. Thank you.
A big one, I would say, for the police commission. The police commission is actually a very diverse commission. So seeing how you can't partner with EPD Special Investigations Unit and provide those community connections. So help them foster those relationships out in the community. So when things do pop up, they're able to receive that information in a streamlined process. Even if it's not criminal, they can have that community contact, that safe person. They feel like this is someone that will take this information and actually act on it. So they can refer out to where it needs to be. Because the SIU is a great resource, and I feel like it's underutilized on some level.
Commissioner Wynn, 30 seconds.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I wanted to say, Soki, I completely understand what you were saying. earlier is, if you see a sinking ship, I mean, you see a hole in the ship and there's water coming in, you could sit around and talk about it. You can, draw a diagram, you can do all of that stuff. But the bottom line is you got to plug it. You got to plug that hole so that no more water would come in. Otherwise, you can, talk until the cows come home. You can come up with all kind of theories about how the water came in to the boat. It wouldn't save you. It wouldn't save everyone on the ship. And we're on the ship. We're on the ship together. And there are a few individuals who are punching holes through the ship and the water is coming in. That's the bottom line. We can discuss this, forever, and it wouldn't solve the issue. We'll just end up sinking. So we need to just plug it up. That's the solution. But of course, that's all an analogy. The real solution is a little harder than that. I mean, a lot harder than that. But anyway, I just wanted to share that and say that I empathize with your frustration. Thank you.
Casey Adams, I'd like to give you an opportunity to respond. Comment or
Yeah, I'll try to be brief.
back away slowly and avoid eye contact.
Maybe just tell us like SIU, tell us what the police department's doing.
That's-
I can't believe we just had an hour discussion and that nothing comes up about what are the police doing.
And that's
Sorry.
exactly where I'm going. And Dr. Booker, I hear you loud and clear. But some of the language about, us not defending or looking after African-American communities, I do take a little bit of offense to. We have dedicated detectives. This is the SIU unit, Special Investigations, that are dedicated to do nothing. They have collateral duty assignments, but we have individual detectives dedicated to each of our underrepresented groups in this city. And when a bias crime happens, we have a very, very robust response. Every officer in this agency has been trained extensively in what a bias incident is, what a bias crime is, ever since Senate Bill 3115, I believe it was, circa 2019, which is what changed our criminal code to call things out as a bias crime and established the hotline for the state. I mean, we've had a pretty robust response in the city. Is it enough? No, it's not. We know that. There's some things that need to be done that we're working on with this agency. Building trust within the community starts by having an agency that's representative of the community it serves. And in our recruiting and our actions, we're trying to develop a diverse workforce that looks like our community. I will tell you, we are as represented, if not overrepresented in this organization with African-American individuals, because we just did a demographic survey. So we're trying to do the things that we can do to outreach to the community. But I don't remember who said it, and V, I think it was you. What really helps us right now is, and I'll just use an example. We had a great meeting with the Pride Festival organization, Eugene Pride, and talked through some things with them about the Pride Festival and what happened there. We're trying to draw relationships there and build an environment of trust. Because what do we know about each one of our groups, and what do we know when we particularly talk about hate and bias crime, is that they're underreported, and that's the frightening piece. We know that there's more crime going on that's being reported. When we can get to greater reporting, when we can get to greater trust, and we can get to some of these offenders earlier and often and interdict with a criminal investigation, and then utilize Office Equity and Community Engagement, Dre's team, which has a fabulous relationship. And this is what exists in the city of Eugene for many, many years. In Oregon law enforcement was the model for bias crime response. And a lot of agencies across the state have actually modeled after what Eugene's done with what used to be, help me out, Dre, I forget what we called it before, Office of Engagement, Community Equity.
Human rights, neighborhood involvement.
I'm sorry?
HRNI?
Yeah, HRNI, yeah.
Yep.
Human rights and neighborhood involvement, right? And so, there's some things that are going on. I don't want to take any more time. we are doing things. We recognize we're not where we need to be yet. We want to be there. But going back to what I was going with the Pride Festival, you know, NAACP, Juneteenth, for example. I mean, some of the things that we can participate in as an organization, and understanding that when an officer shows up in uniform, it can be a very traumatic event or traumatic for people. It can invoke some experiences that are negative. But we have to try to find some ground there where we can be more involved with this community, where we can be more involved with our underrepresented groups, particularly, so that we get to know each other. And it's not just me and us talking here, but it's the officers on the street that are doing the work, that are out in these community events to get to know everybody. So I'll pull my soapbox back a little bit. I apologize for that. But that's, I hope you feel it, because it comes from the heart, and it's something I've done my entire career. So that's about it.
Hawkins, don't expect me to tell you that at home. Closing comment from you, sir.
I do want that comment at home.
I think you do.
So, and forgive me, I didn't catch your title. Sergeant, Captain,
Deputy Chief.
Deputy Chief.
Deputy
Sorry,
Chief.
Adams. I do feel your heart and your spirit in that, and I believe it. But the numbers don't reflect it, right?
Yeah.
And so we're a product of, you know, what the results are. So for me, in my day-to-day work, if I put something together and I put the strategy together to impact the community, if I come back the next year and it hasn't changed much, I need to go back to the drawing board and kind of put something else out there. And so, and I'm not, and I say that just to push back on what you mentioned there, that work is being done, because it's not being reflected in the results, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but on the other side of that, I don't want to say that it's all the police. Police got to figure out how to do it, because it really is like a much bigger issue and much more involved as a community as a whole. I do think, you know, building community trust is probably one of the best ways to do that. You know, partnering together on different events, the support with different things in the community to make sure those, you know, these different communities are safe. I mean, you have to do it with you, right? Children, you want to make sure the children are not afraid of the police. They want to go to the police, so you're making sure you're doing things in the community with them. Same thing with each community group as well. So NAACP definitely welcome that. You know, some type of partnership there. I know that, you know, when we talk about more diverse African Americans on the staff, you know, someone came to us and asked us about, you know, doing a recruiting piece, and the first thing that came out is like, well, is there support within the organization if there's more African American officers on there? Do they have like diversity and equity, you know, or officer with the organization? Do we have things like that is a welcoming? Are they ready for more diverse populations in the force? So I think about that, just like I said, because of my role. I think about that not only with the police force, but with every organization that we deal with. But with that said, thank you. I appreciate that. I would love to talk to you more about how we can do things. I love strategy and how we can make things better. This is one thing that I worry about.
That's what we wanted. The collaboration with all the different agencies that can assist. Okay, I'm going to close this conversation. The email addresses for Demond and for Dre both are in the Zoom chat, so conversations can be continued via email. And I would like to move on to our final topic on the agenda, which is the review of policy 1210. Commissioner Lemons, I know you've done a whole lot of work reviewing this, so I would love to have you, I believe it's supposed to read the issue statement. The commission would like to hear from the department about the use of cameras in downtown Eugene regarding safety and how information and data from the cameras is being used. We did identify it as well as emergent technology as number 4 and 10 respectively on our work plan. Commissioner Lemons, I have no doubt that you came very prepared for this.
You know me, y'all know me way too well on this one. So yeah, like how should I go about this? Should I just list off my questions, or should I go one by one? So I'm coming from a point of where like I would really prefer clarity, Deputy Chief Adams. And I understand like you're put into the hot seat on a very sensitive issue, at least for me. And I think because it hits 2 work plans out of the top 10 in the police commission for us, but really just looking for clarity, and feel free to, say you don't know and you're gonna like defer to Chief Skinner, because I can ask him in his comments next month. So Vice Chair, just super quickly, like how would you like to go? Would you like me to just list them out or one by one?
Let's go one by one, and we'll cover as much as we can this evening. And if we need to bring it back to the table next month, we can do that.
Sounds great. Thanks. I hope to get to it all tonight. So I have one that's out of policy, but within policy. So on 1210.4, when is sound actually recorded? In the policy, it says not normally recorded, but that leaves a lot of leeway. So I'm just wondering who decides when audio is recorded, under what circumstances, under which systems.
So we're currently not audio recording.
Okay, so you're currently not. Do they have the capabilities to do so?
Yes, I believe some of the camera systems do. The Guardian trailers do. The downtown cameras, I do not believe have the ability to record sound.
Great, and thank you for splitting up the 2 programs, because that's going to be one of my questions as well. So the trailers do, but the cameras that we're seeing continually put up around downtown do not.
Yeah, and Commissioner, I'll have to verify that. My understanding is the downtown fixed cameras do not record sound, but I would have to confirm that. I don't know that definitively.
No, I appreciate that. And from my observations, I have not seen that on the downtown cameras. So I fully believe that. But let me, if you can send an email or anything, if that's not correct, just let us know. And then under the same policy, it says under the definition, it's used to reduce crime problems. That also seems very vague. So I was wondering if you had any clarification, so the public can understand exactly when they're used and when they're not.
Oh, absolutely. So let's separate out the Guardian trailers, which are the mobile trailers, versus the fixed cameras that you see around downtown. So looking at the Guardian trailers, for example, those are moved into either criminal hotspots or locations where we have concerns regarding safety for either large-scale events or community groups. For example, in light of what happened is going on in Gaza and Israel, we did move a Guardian trailer over the Temple Beth Israel here in town, just as a safeguard piece for that, especially in light of in talking today, the prevalence that we're seeing of hate crimes perpetuated against the Jewish community. So that's an example of how we would use the cameras to place in a position where we had a community safety issue. We also look at and we evaluate statistical information. So we will look at where we may have a criminal hotspot, where we may have an uptick in activity. We recently had something over, and I forget the business, off West 11th, where we're having a number of thefts from the business. We see a spike in statistical information. We move a camera trailer over there. First of all, number one is a deterrent, because a big giant trailer there with a yellow or a blue flashing light on top of it with cameras everywhere is a deterrent. And secondly, if crime does occur, then we have the ability to record it and potentially identify suspects, perpetrators after the fact. So let's go back to the fixed cameras. Fixed cameras are placed in areas that have been, that we've seen ongoing criminal activity. And so the downtown cameras are a great example of Parks blocks, for example, where we not only have seen congregations of individuals in there, but we've also seen some criminal activity, such as not so much anymore with open air drug use, but a lot of crimes that are being committed. And we're also coupling that with a request from our downtown businesses to say, we're seeing thefts, we're seeing assaults, we're seeing uptick in all this criminal behavior. We need some help. Can you do something? Which leads to us placing the cameras downtown. So one of the things about the cameras downtown, with all the cameras, they're clearly marked that they're recording. And so, you know, and we clearly are keeping them either on our private property with permission, or they're also kept in public property and in places where there isn't a specific expectation of privacy in general. So hopefully, Commissioner, that answered your questions for you. I know it was a little long-winded.
No, absolutely it did. And like I said, I'm looking for clarity and for us to get this on the record about what this is about. So no, I appreciate that. And you actually alluded to my non-policy question, so I guess I'll just get to that right now. So for the Overwatch cameras, Chief Skinner had talked about there's a public-private or partnership going on with those. I was wondering if you had more details on that, because when I was going downtown over the last couple of weeks, I realized that several of these Overwatch cameras, as you categorize them, are in public right-of-ways. So I was just wondering if I could get more details about the public-private partnership.
So I can't speak to the public-private partnership because that's a little bit new to me. What I can speak to is that the cameras were partially obtained on a grant, I think through the Justice Assistance Program. And so just to making sure that we're not confusing a private party versus a government grant piece. But I do know that they were partially funded via a federal grant.
Commissioner Dominguez?
Oh,
I mean, you can keep going. I don't mind.
no, go for it, Commissioner. Yes. I got my stuff written down. That's okay.
Okay, thank you. So I was just wondering, at what point do private property, or excuse me, if there are police cameras being used on private property, at what point do you tell them, we actually need this camera for a different place? So like, can you get your own camera? Like, when does that happen?
That's a great question. We're constantly moving the Guardian trailers around all the time. And so there's a ongoing list that we refer to where, and it's not generally just done because somebody says, hey, I need a camera here. There's an evaluation process that comes into place. So we go back to Temple Beth Israel. That's pretty easy ask and a pretty easy, we're going to move a camera trailer over there. But then, you know, we look at and we triage, like that camera trailer that we moved there was supposed to go down to the steam plant because we've had all kinds of uptick of criminal activity in that riverfront park and around the steam plant. So we're constantly triaging what's a higher need, what's a higher responsibility, and that list is constantly ebbing and flowing. So they're not necessarily moved because we have a request. They're more moved because we have some type of something that we've either identified through statistics or information, or that we're monitoring.
So like you said, the cameras are a deterrent themselves. So I understand why you would want that there. But I guess I'm wondering, so for example, as I understand it, there is a bar in downtown that has had a lot of violence that keeps erupting from it, and the camera is really close by that place. So is it just going to be kind of perpetually there in order to kind of deter them, or like, should the Davis, for example, get their own camera? And then, like, I guess I'm wondering, like, what's the balance there, if any? Or I guess how's that conversation going?
Well, that's a pretty complex situation, and it becomes what happens inside the bar versus what happens outside the bar, or any business for that example. And so when we see an uptick in what we've seen, particularly in the areas around the Davis, is not necessarily criminal conduct occurring inside, but it's criminal conduct that's occurring outside, including 2 shootings within the last year. And so for us, that obviously will trigger up to a higher triage level. And so we're more motivated to move a camera into that area to try to look for this type of activity. But that doesn't mean it's going to stay there forever. Like I said, we'll continually rotate them around. And one of the things about the camera trailers is if you leave them in a place for too long, they just become a normal place for people. And then the idea of it actually being a deterrent is gone because people are just used to seeing it. And so we move them, and we will move the ones downtown around a little bit. So
Thank you.
Commissioner Lemons?
No, thank you. So yeah, thank you, Commissioner Dominguez. You actually got to some of what I was going to get into. So so I will follow up with Chief Skinner, probably over just the chief's comments on the next meeting about the public-private ownership, because I do have some very specific questions about that. But before we leave that policy, I just wanted to like very much put on the public record and put to y'all's attention that these cameras are going up without signage, and within this policy, it says that these cameras are explicitly supposed to be posted, that you're being recorded. So I would first of all encourage EPD to catch up with the cameras that they've already installed, and then also encourage EPD to in future installations put signs up at the very same time that they're putting up cameras. So thank you, and I'll follow up with Chief Skinner about that one further. So, and this is getting a bit more in the weeds, but on 1210.7, it says that y'all are retaining these footage for 30 days, which I appreciate that you're deleting data. It's necessary not only for storage reasons, but also for privacy reasons. But that also makes me ask, are these records, and there's a bit of language in there that makes it a bit obscure, but like, are these records able to be requested through the Freedom of Information Act? And are they able to be requested for other crimes that are not like in the moment pointed to by EPD as a problem? So like, let's say my house was broken into a block away from one of these downtown cameras. As a citizen, am I able to ask EPD to look at their cameras? Outside of, you know, what you all are using it for investigatory and looking out reasons, I would like to know if we have access as citizens. Thank you.
I'll have to check on the FOIA, Commissioner, because I don't know the answer to that. So I'm gonna have to check to see if you could do a FOIA request on that Freedom of Information Act request and have that information released to you. I believe the policy reads that we will share information with other law enforcement entities, but we do not do sharing as just a standard course of business. To your question about my house is burglarized 2 blocks away, would we, you know, look at the camera? Maybe. Now, like, you know, one of the things that we will do, and I hate to give some trade secrets away, but I mean, pretty much every house, every business, we have cameras everywhere. And so ring cameras are a great source of intel for us. So your house is burglarized. We go and canvass the neighborhood and ask people, do you have a ring camera? Do you have any footage that shows out? So we see, you know, an individual walking away from your house at the time of burglary, and they're heading towards the Guardian trailer. Yeah, I think, or the downtown camera. Yeah, I think we would look at the camera to see if we can't track where the individual is walking to based off and using that camera information. But it's not just a simple of, you know, I had something occur 5 blocks away. Will I look at this camera for something like that? I mean, the investigative time it would take for us to look through that much video to watch is probably, unless it's a pretty serious event, is probably not worth it.
Thanks for the transparency on that one. I appreciate that. That's something that us as a police commission might want to discuss, is like, who makes that decision on what's worth it and what's not, and when to get into that. But that's not solely related to the security camera, so I'll table that concern for a different date. So I'll just for the public record, my biggest concern about the 30-day turnover period, which I have my appreciations for as well, is that, you know, most people don't understand or know what to even request within 30 days. The investigation literally takes place before people know. So it's just something, it's a concern of mine and something I would like some answers about. And then lastly,
Councilor Zelenka.
Yeah, related to what you were talking about, Councilor Lemon, the media storage section 1210.7 says, you know, 30 days. So we don't keep this stuff forever. So because it's not practical. and so I get there's a limitation to how fast or how fast things happen, so that probably not likely to be able to access it if you're in an information request, especially a FOIA. I can't imagine a FOIA going through in 30 days. But on that particular sentence, it reads kind of funny to me. It says each camera will store up to 30 days of data. After 30 days of recording, the system will begin a process of overwriting previous data maintaining the previous 30 days? How can it maintain it and override it at the same time?
So if I may on that, Commissioner, what we're talking about is if today I had video on it and 30 days from now I wasn't using it anymore, the system would automatically start to write over that day. So think about it from a 30-day period and it's ongoing.
It's a rolling.
It's a rolling 30 days. So it's not like there's just a month cutoff. It's a rolling 30 days. So 30 days after the event, it will start to overwrite.
Right. That's what I thought it said, but this is really confusing because it says maintaining the previous 30 days. I would suggest language that said after 30 days, the system will begin the process of writing previous data, maintaining maybe a rolling 30 days of data, something like that. Because you're not retaining the 30 days before.
I hear you.
Councilor Blake, do you have a motion for that?
No, it's a suggestion. They can change it.
Well, then I would like to make the motion.
All right, we have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
All right, Dr. Booker, thank you. And Councilor Zelenka. All right. So the motion, as I understand it, is to change the wording of 1210.7 to clarify the terminology so that it's very easy to understand that it's a rolling 30 days data that is being stored. All in favor, and we are making this recommendation to Sergeant Smith. Is that correct,
Yes.
Holly? Okay. So all in favor of making this recommendation, say aye. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Aye. And all in opposition, say no. And we have no nays, so we will forward that to Sergeant Smith.
You'll coordinate that.
Yes, yeah, I'll coordinate that with Sergeant Smith.
If we're on that policy, I mean, I think that's a really valid thing that 30 days you have to send a notice of preservation to the city within 30 days. Most people can't even find their lawyer within 30. You know, if this is a civil thing about something that happened, there's just no way that's a viable thing. And the next policy says that no data comes off the cameras. So if we're to believe that, the only data is a 30-day rolling on the camera. And that is not a legitimate source for someone to access with a real problem that surfaces in the real world. So I think we should address that time frame.
DC Adams, do the cameras have the capability of, or does the storage, the city of Eugene, do they have even the ability to store for longer than 30 days?
Yeah, so there's a few competing things that we have to think about here, and I don't know the iteration of where the 30 days came from, but there's going to be costs associated with additional storage, so that's going to be a concern. We probably have OARs regarding retention of the video that I would have to confirm at what the OARs say for how long we can keep this video, because there's a competing community interest on, we're in here and we're saying, well, I want to get that info.
Right.
There's a competing community interest where people will say, well, you're storing my data like forever kind of thing.
Commissioner Lemons.
Yeah. So, there's some pieces there. There's some work that'll need to be done here. I made some notes about the OARs in the 30 days. And we can visit that if the commission wants to do something separate. Otherwise, we can visit that with Sergeant Smith and just see if we can't figure out what some of this is. Because I would assume we could FOIA that or some iteration of that, public records release of some kind. But I don't know that definitively. I don't know why we would not be able to. I just have never heard that question asked before.
We can refer that back to Sergeant Smith for follow-up next month. Commissioner Dominguez?
Yes, I was just wondering if you can clarify this section. I'm not sure if this is what Commissioner Lemons was asking you necessarily, but anyway, 12.10.4. Just the last two, if you can clarify: assistance in monitoring pedestrian and vehicle traffic activity, assistance improving the general environment and security on public streets. Like, what does that mean? What does it mean?
Which part?
Oh, sorry, 12.10.4, the last two bullet points.
Okay.
Like, how does it help?
Traffic accidents, traffic flows, we think about park blocks in the areas downtown, marches, similar things to that. That's one of the things. We could actually do some statistical analysis if we really wanted to about pedestrian flow, timing of lights, for example, but I think traffic engineering would do that. We think about improving the general environment and security on public streets. That's a catch-all statement. So we think about putting a camera downtown. And again, the deterrent piece that we think about is there's a camera there. The overarching idea is that somebody will look up, they're thinking about engaging in some criminal conduct, they see a camera, I'm going to be recorded, and so they therefore decide not to commit said crime. So that's really just a general statement that, you know, the cameras are there. The goal and the idea behind the cameras are to increase public safety. And
Okay,
yeah.
so then that brings us back to just what Commissioner Lemons was saying about just like, well, then identify it with like a little badge because then it really will deter because, you know.
Well, yeah, I'm going to have to look into this because my understanding is all these cameras downtown are clearly marked and they have the blue flashing lights on them and information that says this is areas being recorded. So, Councilor Lemons, can you, or Commissioner Lemons, can you point me in the right direction on this one?
Absolutely be happy to.
Yeah.
Corner of 10th and Oak, but not on the corner. It's on the alley right behind Oak Street. So
Okay.
not exactly sure where that is. There's another one that just went up on the Kesey Square right next to the food trucks. That doesn't sign either. And then the one over by Jameson's, right next to the By Two or right across the street from the By Two does not have signage either. So there's 3 examples. Sure, there's more, but there's 3.
Yeah. I'll check into it. The signage should be going in. I mean, we have that. I believe it's clearly marked in here and it should be there. So.
All right, Commissioner Lemons, what else do you have?
No, thanks. I'm glad I'm getting to lastly. I know I'm going to follow up with Chief Skinner over a lot of this stuff, but on the last sentence of this policy, it says that, you know, basically exceptions could be made by the chief of police as to who can get entry to this data or access to this data. I would wonder what conditions would the chief of police consider this, and honestly, I'm glad you're here, Chief or Deputy Chief Adams, because I'm not really concerned about what Chief Skinner would do. I'm concerned about the policies into what Chief Skinner is bound to do, and more concerned about what the next chief is and the next chief is going to do. Right. So basically, what exceptions to access on the video policy would the chief allow, or what is allowed within the policy? Because that leaves it open-ended as well, which I'm not comfortable with.
Here.
Oh, that was for you, Deputy Chief Adams. Sorry.
I'm sorry, Commissioner. I thought you were going to follow up with Chief Skinner on that one. Quite frankly, I don't know that I can answer that one. I don't know that I can answer that one. The statement causes me a little pause too. So.
Great, thank you.
We'll do some work on that.
No, I appreciate that. And I really appreciate you, Deputy Chief Adams, for actually seeing the legitimacy in what this commission is doing with digital technology. So you see the concerns, I see the concerns. I think the commission sees the concerns. So I really look forward to connecting with you, connecting with Chief Skinner, and really like getting more clarity and granularity out of this policy. So. But thank you so much for your transparency, and thank you for being here for probably what you were not prepared for.
Yes. 2 questions. Where it says the 1210.5 letter B, I was just wondering, what kind of things would the city employees use it for, the cameras? Like it says that they could also access the video.
I think we would be looking at, we've got risk, for example, our attorney, civil attorneys, city attorney. There would be others that would be able to view that either through attorney-client privilege or otherwise. So that's what you're looking at as other city employees.
Oh, that includes like what is it, people like the public defender people too, right?
Well, not public defender. I mean, they could subpoena that information, or if there was an event, we would discover it to the public defender. But they wouldn't have direct access to it.
And then my other question is, oh no, where'd it go? Okay, wait. Never mind. I have no other question apparently.
Commissioner Lemons?
Thank you, Vice Chair. So just to follow up on Commissioner Dominguez, so on 1210.5, which I'm glad she caught. So access by other city employees, I would so you stated that city attorneys are allowed access to that, but that's the only role or profession that you said were allowed. Are there any other city employees that are allowed to access this under current policy?
Yeah, not that I could think of. I mean, we're talking about a camera system that's part of a CJIS system, Criminal Justice Investigator Information System. I mean, that has limited access in and of itself. So it's not a wide open, I work for, I don't know, pick an example, Parks and Rec, and I want to come down and look at what's happening with our plants. No, I mean, it's part of, and it's spelled out in here, the public safety camera system. So now, one of the other things we may have when we're talking about other city employees, and it's not called out specifically in here, is our community safety officers. So, or you may think of Paul Bishop, who's our downtown office manager, who is the man that actually spearheads all our camera systems. So when we talk about, instead of calling out direct in policy, that these individuals, other city employees as needed. So is what I'm saying is, we have people that are CJIS qualified, they would be able to access it, attorneys, but somebody that was not part or hadn't been through a CJIS background would not have the ability to access these camera systems.
No, thank you for that. I just really think it needs to be articulated in the policy. And that's kind of where I'm coming from. I think for public transparency reasons, for public trust in the police, I think it's important all around. And this is it's a semi-new policy, but it's certainly something that people are paying attention to. So thank you.
Commissioner Dominguez, 30 seconds.
Okay, great, thanks. I guess I was wondering, for the restrictions of use in public notice, video monitoring will be conducted in a professional, ethical, and legal manner. What are the means of doing that? Just because, well, I don't know if you watch Snowden, but basically it gets violated. So I'm wondering, what are the methods?
You might have to help me out a little bit with that one, Commissioner. What are the methods of being professional, ethical, and legal?
Well, yes. How is this monitored? So whoever has access to this, how do you know that they are doing it in an ethical manner? Does that make sense? Like, how do you know? Because I mean, there's not a camera on them monitoring others, right?
Or like, how is it defined?
Okay, so I track where you're going with this question, but I guess we could say that about any position in the police department, that how do I know that individuals are doing what they need to be doing? I mean, we do thorough backgrounds, we bring people in, we train them the right way. At the end of the day, they have to make the ethical decisions. We can't be looking over their shoulders every second of every day. To that end, though, you can't access this camera system without a unique login and identifying number. And right now, to my knowledge, I think there's only 3 people that can actually access the system: Paul Bishop, Mike Ware, and Matt Salo. I don't think anybody else can. But if there was any allegations of misconduct, then we would just sort it right through the auditor's office, and we could go back, and it's just like any keystroke on a computer. We could look at what was done.
So since we are out of time, is there a motion? Would someone like to make a motion that we include this discussion on next month's agenda as well? If we allot some time on next month's agenda to continue this discussion.
I'll make sure. I was hoping someone else would, but I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Discussion. Yeah, I just want to point out, like, learning in the course of this conversation, that this is criminal justice information system data. This is protected. This is password. it's a background check. If you access CGIS, you have to do it in a secure location. There's a record that you logged in to get it. So this is pretty secure stuff. This is no different. If you run someone's background check or driver's license without permission in the department, that's a violation. You'll lose your CGIS clearance and you'll be out of a job. So learning that this data is protected that way really changes, but the preservation is a huge issue that you've raised, and that's the one. But I would not suggest that we have to keep talking about this, but
Thank you, Judge Lyman. DC Adams.
If I might, maybe by next month, it gives us time to look at this and maybe get with Sergeant Smith and maybe offer some edits to this policy to the commission, just as a starting point for, hey, we're talking about it. We see some commonality in some of these things. Maybe we can get to it and then, reduce the amount of time that we have to sit and discuss some of these things and find some language preemptively that might be more tenable for all of us, I think.
So if I'm understanding correctly, I need to hear an alternate motion.
And I'm the one that made the motion. Can I amend my motion?
Yes, please.
Okay, great. So I would like to amend my motion that we will revisit this in January of 2024. And that allows for Chief Skinner to come in with comments, to come in with answers to the questions that were not able to be answered today, and allows for other commissioners to come in as well. And then we can decide whether or not that's necessary.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Why not December?
So December's our next meeting, and I was trying to give them time to get back to us and for us to digest the information and be able to come back. So I was motioning for this not to be on our agenda next month because I know I'm bugging you all with this. Essentially,
is to bring up this conversation in January, having had more time for Chief Skinner and Sergeant Smith to dig into it further.
Right.
All in favor, say aye.
Oh, we need.
And all opposed, say no. Ayes have it. Thank you. We will move into closing comments. Actually, Holly, did we have public comment this evening?
Check. We do not.
Okay, great. Commissioner Wynn?
Yes, Vice Chair?
We're starting closing comments and I'm starting with you.
Okay.
Sorry, right there in the hot seat.
No, thank you. Well, my time has come to leave the commission.
Oh.
And I'm here to say my goodbye. I've moved outside of Eugene this week, which prompted my need to submit my resignation. Is not easy. It's definitely, very hard, but it has to be done. My departure is bittersweet. For 4.5 years, I served with you, and I see you every month, and some of you I see you more often because we work on projects together and things like that. But it's been a tremendous experience for both personally and professionally. I definitely have grown a lot being here with you, and I owe you my gratitude. The work we've done together has been amazing. We definitely have impacted our community, and I'm confident that the seeds that we have planted will continue to grow and flourish in years to come. I also want to thank, give my heartfelt thanks to Chief Skinner, to DC Adams, to Holly for your dedication and support for the commission, for the work we do. And it's been great working with you, and I wish you all well. I wish you the best, and I love you all.
That nobody is ever allowed to make a closing comment ever again if that's what you're going to do with it. Judge Lyman?
Thank you, and thank you, Commissioner. You'll be missed for sure. I just want to comment. I think that the discussion about the policy and the cameras and talking about policing, that's what I come to the police commission for. And I think it's important that we get these presentations, and they're important, and it's important information. And I want us to have that information, but that we had a whole conversation about bias and crimes. And we only got to the fact that we have a special investigative unit and we have detectives assigned to particular communities. And if there's action to happen, or if there's police commission action to happen, it's to the city councilors, what's the budget? Are you supported the DC Adams? But is SIU effective? What could make SIU more effective? I just want us to, I find that we spend a lot of time absorbing the presentations and information from other parts of the city, which is informative and important to our work. But it was really like when we deal with the policies and the policing, that's where we can fulfill the mission of the police commission. And I'm sorry for getting on a horse here and riding it, but thank you. All right, thanks.
Commissioner Parra?
No comment at this time.
Thank you. Commissioner Lemons?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Chair. And I just want to second everything that Commissioner Lehman put out. And honestly, I want to thank Judge Lehman as well for being here. I rely on you a lot for legal advice. Like I'm here just with my curiosity and questions and concerns. And I'm very happy to have you come in and be like, this is the law. And so I really appreciate
Well, the diversity of this place is its strength. So I really respect all of you and thank you for saying that. But it's not.
No, absolutely. And I'm coming from a truthful place as well. Like I really respect that, like you can come in and be like, hey, this is the law, because it informs all of us like how to maneuver going forward. So really appreciate you. And like I appreciate all of you. Like I know this has been kind of my chief concern. So thank you all for making time in your days to like address my chief concern. And thank you for seeing it as relevant. And I look forward to continuing working with y'all. And I'm gonna very much miss Commissioner Wynn. Thank you for being such a role model and showing me how to work in these spaces. Thank you.
Councilor Yang?
Thank you. So V, I will very much miss you being on this commission. Thank you for introducing me to great lunch places in town. I look forward to you doing that in your new home when you have a chance. I've learned a lot from you, and I'm really appreciate you taking your time to be on this commission and sharing your knowledge and your experience in life. So thank you so much. And I have no other comments.
I'd like to make a motion to extend our meeting by 5 minutes to get through the rest of closing comments. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. And now can we vote on it? All in favor, please say aye to extend 5 minutes. Thank you. Our ayes are going to carry it. Councilor Zelenka.
Yeah, 2 comments. Silky, if you want to follow up, please reach out. Second was I appreciate all of you in the work that you do and the amount of effort and time you put into this as community volunteers. It's extremely important to have people like you populate these different commissions that we have and do the hard work that the council can't necessarily do, and bring those recommendations back up to the council and hold different departments accountable. In this particular one, the police department. And having said that, V, I am sorry to see you go. You'd be extremely hard to replace. Your point of view is always welcome, very well thought out, and will be sorely missed. So I hope your adventures are good, and I wish you good luck. And thanks for all the 4.5 years of working with us.
Thank you so much.
Commissioner Booker?
Thank you. First and foremost, Commissioner Wynn, you're going to be deeply missed. I love your intelligence, and you're very, very insightful. So I'm definitely, I didn't get to work with you that long. So I'm definitely going to miss not being able to work with you longer, but you definitely are going to be missed. So thank you for just your insightfulness and your intelligence that you bring to all of our conversations. That's first. Secondly, earlier, I didn't get to really respond to it, but the deputy chief alluded to being offended by me speaking truth about the numbers, about the level of protection that the Black community feels. It wasn't meant to intend, especially speaking on the truth of the numbers, but I will hope that we are equally offended by the fact that the Black community is targeted on a regular basis, and we are still leading statistically in every category of crime against the Black community, and hope that we are equally offended by that. And I hope that my fellow commissioners will, I didn't get to make a motion, and I don't want to make a motion, but will join me until in this conversation, being a part of our monthly conversation until those statistics change, especially working with the EPD and and having city councils, that we continue to have this discussion until the data is actually put into a plan. So I like to just for us to think about that going forward, and so that we don't get sidetracked with other things, understanding that this is a crisis. This is a health crisis. This is a community crisis, and we should be, as commissioners, we should be addressing it as such. So thank you for listening to me today, allowing me to speak. I definitely enjoyed the insightful conversation, and definitely look forward to hopefully creating a plan with the City Council and the Police Commission on how we can better protect our Black, African American, and more community members. All right, thank you.
No.
Commissioner Booker, I look forward to your opening comments next meeting. Commissioner Dominguez.
You have been wonderful. You have tried to mentor me as best as you can. I didn't always take your advice, but I always did enjoy it and appreciate it, and I liked our conversations. And you're very insightful. Just today, when you were talking, I was just like, that makes a lot of sense. Oh my goodness, I'm so glad you're here. And then now you're saying that you're leaving, so I'm like, oh no, okay, well, great. Just saying, I do remember that we recently talked about the whole like commissioners and whether or not they need to be in city bounds. I thought there was like a special thing where you can like specially petition for continuing to be a part of it, since a replacement will be needed, I suppose. But anyway, maybe you do want the break. It is a lot of work that we do, so that would be fine too, but just something to consider, at least that I remember that you could actually continue on. Okay, and having said that, I had another idea just real quick. Okay, when I was in middle school, we had something called the field day. Basically, we went out and learned about our environment and like erosion and all that kind of stuff and how to preserve things. What if there was a civil duty day for students where you go to city council, you go to like the government buildings, and they get a tour of what it's like to be like somebody that participates in the community. And in that, maybe it's just like a tiny bit where you talk about like how racism's not cool. And if you're seeing community leaders are saying that, then it's just like this city represents community, is represented by community leaders that are saying, don't be racist, don't be biased, we're welcoming, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it would just be like one of those field days, except for it's like civil duty day or something. Just an idea. Okay, thank you.
Dominguez, if you want to start putting that together, I want to work on that with you because that's brilliant. For my closing comments, for my closing comments, thank you very much for putting up with me as I raced us through the agenda this evening. I know several of you didn't get an opportunity to speak in the entirety of your passion, so thank you for your forbearance. Commissioner Wynn, not only are you a very dear friend of mine, most of you may not even know that Commissioner Wynn is single-handedly responsible for me even applying to be on the police commission. I had no idea what the police commission was. I had no idea what it involved. And V said, you should really do it. And I have a tendency to do the things that V recommends because he has good ideas. And so here I am. So that is all entirely to you, due to you, Commissioner Wynn. DC Adams, thank you so much for your presence and your engagement this evening. And Dre and Damon are both gone, but our gratitude to them as well. And our meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.